Avenue. I gave comments Friday afternoon in the 5th Precinct, in direct response to a letter that had been released to the media by members of the council. And now I'm being told there's another letter and another press release around the same issue. So I'd just like to point out that my remarks on Friday were dealing with a direct response to that and the accusation that Minneapolis police don't care and that Minneapolis police did nothing. And that's simply just wrong. There's no world in which that's true. And I think the reality is this is just another example of the situation that we're in this town today after the last 4 years. This is the result of the over-politicization of policing in Minneapolis, where instantly there is a knee-jerk reaction to say the cops don't care and they don't do anything. And so to me, it is not a serious response of what we're trying to do here. I came here, I left my family to come here, come halfway across the country to try and build something here. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to rebuild a department that is severely understaffed. And yes, in this particular instance, we failed this victim 100% because that should not have happened to him. The Minneapolis police somehow did not act urgently enough to prevent that individual from being shot. And to that victim, I say, I am sorry that this happened to you. But it could not be anything further from the truth to say that we did nothing or that we just simply don't care. That's not true. But we failed to act urgently enough to prevent that shooting from happening. And unfortunately, he's not the only victim where that's been the case. We have not been able to respond as urgently enough as we should for countless victims in this city. And I am not here to use staffing as an excuse, but I am telling you that is the reality of your police department today. That does have an impact, having 40% fewer sworn members across the board. It impacts everything that we do. We responded to a shooting on a balcony less than a week ago. An individual, the first 911 call involved a domestic situation, possibly with weapons. It took us 15 minutes to get there from the first 911 call. And thankfully, we were there within a few minutes of the actual shooting. But that, again, is just the reality of the staffing situation that we have, that everything that we do is impacted by the reality that the police department is much smaller today than what it was prior to 2020, and we are dealing with a much higher call load and a much higher load of investigations and serious street crime to deal with. So to me, a serious way to look at this, a way that leadership should be looking at a situation like this, would be to calmly and professionally say after the fact, okay, what did we do? Let's gather all the information. Let's gather all the facts. I've been personally involved in this since Friday, throughout the entire weekend. I still don't know the entirety of everything that happened over the course of a year here. But the right thing to do is gather all the information, bring in some experts who know about policing, and let's try and have a serious conversation and identify who did what, who failed to do something, and what can we do better next time. The other thing that's incredibly frustrating is we cannot, as a community, on one hand say, hey, we want cops to use less force. We want less SWAT teams. We want more de-escalation. And then when we actually do that, say, how come the cops didn't use the SWAT team right away? De-escalation in a lot of situations takes time. To the folks in that community, I'm sure most of the residents there know, we have been there 24/7 the last few days. We have been trying to get this person into custody safely, which would mean getting him outside of the house when he is not near guns or any other weapons. And we have been using our behavioral threat assessment team. We have used a psychiatrist. We have spoken to this individual's family. We have made dozens of attempts to contact this person through every means we could possibly find. And up until this point, we have been unsuccessful. So clearly, we are running out of options before we will have to escalate the matter, and I think it's ultimately going to come to that. But again, to say that we simply don't care or we did nothing is simply not true. And I'll pass it off to the mayor if you have anything to add before we.
The chief has my full support, as do our officers who are dealing with this very dangerous and complex cocktail that is presently taking place. We're talking about a person with mental illness that has firearms likely in the home, in a residential neighborhood. And we've heard repeatedly, as the chief said, that we should be de-escalating tense situations, that we should be trying to do less harm and keeping a situation as safe as possible. As to how to do that, I trust expertise in the chief. I am not in the position, nor, by the way, are any council members in the position to start dictating precisely how this is carried out. This is a dangerous situation, and we need to be dealing with it very thoughtfully and methodically. Thankfully, that is what Chief O'Hara is doing right now. And so, again, there's got to be a whole lot less politics right now and a whole lot more care, both for the victim who was shot, and for the perpetrator of these crimes. And we're going to make sure we're doing our part to make sure that arrest takes place. It's not a matter of if, but when.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor or Chief, have you seen Councilmember Koski's letter?
Yeah, I saw it. I saw it just before I came over here. Barely got a chance to read it.
Essentially, the quote is, the chief's hiding behind excuses, and you're just simply...
Yeah, it's saying
I want
that...
to give you a chance to respond to her.
The letter is, as you stated, is stating basically that the chief and I are hiding behind excuses. First of all, as I stated, this is an incredibly complex situation that she clearly doesn't understand in full. And to understand it, you could reach out to me, and more importantly, you could reach out to the chief. She didn't. This feels a whole lot more like politics than it does like somebody that's trying to find a solution. We should be talking about solutions. And I know we're 300 some odd days out from a mayoral election right now, but this should not be about politics, especially now. Doing that kind of thing in this situation, when we have officers that are over there at that home that are trying to de-escalate a tense situation and trying to make arrests with firearms involved in a residential neighborhood, I want nothing to do with that. We're about trying to find a solution right now. Again, less politics. That kind of thing is gross.
I would tell you, leadership is about doing the right thing, regardless of what the masses want. And so I believe that's what we're doing. I know there's a lot of rhetoric right now that we should just kick in the door, jump in there, guns blazing. That's wrong. That is pandering to what's going on while being completely ignorant of fact and having absolutely no expertise on police operations whatsoever. But it's just the sad reality for our residents that I could tell you what the street cops have been saying the last few years I've been here. I don't know how to defend it anymore. It very clearly seems like it's us versus them, like we are on a different team. And we are the ones trying every day in the street to provide public safety and provide the type of policing that people have said that they wanted in this town.
That's right.
So it's very frustrating. It's very easy to sit in the comfort of your home and throw stones and try and break things down. We're trying to build this place back up.
That's right.
And that's
right.
That's work.
So we're not responding to the politics. We're going to find a solution.
Can you just give us a sense of how common a situation like this is, where you don't make the decision to go in right away and have
The cops do this all the time.
Yeah.
This is and I was kind of surprised as an outsider coming here. It happens a lot more here than it ever did in Newark. There's situations that we go to that are potentially barricaded persons in response to 911 calls, and the decision is made. Once it is identified that there is no reasonable threat to another person's life, the police we de-escalate and disengage. That does happen. This is a different situation, though. To be clear, this is a different situation because there has been this ongoing issue, and now there has been a person who has been shot. And so there are certain legalities around executing an arrest warrant inside a residence, and that type of thing is relevant to what happened prior to where we are today. But obviously the situation has escalated, and we are simply doing everything that we can to check every single box before we wind up potentially getting into a deadly force situation. If there was another person in that house, if we didn't have the house surrounded 24/7, if we didn't feel confident that we could keep the community safe there while this played out, we would have acted much sooner.
And here's the other thing: you can't have it both ways. You can't simultaneously insist that police officers should be de-escalating tense situations so that we don't get ourselves into a situation where it's an officer-involved shooting, where a cop shoots somebody inadvertently. They thought they were holding a gun, instead they were holding a remote. And then simultaneously say, right now you got to bust through those doors with a SWAT team and drag somebody out. You can't have it both ways. So look, I am not an expert in all things policing. Our chief is. I am not an expert in all things finance. Our financial officers at the city are. I'm not an expert in all things economic development or public works. But here's the thing. We have people that do this work. Council members need to stop assuming that they are the ones with the expertise in every single one of these situations. They need to start believing and trusting people that actually have that experience. I'm trusting the chief on this one.
With all this talk about what outsiders are saying about how you should be doing your job, is that influencing at all how you're doing the job? Like, do you feel like a SWAT team would be the best thing to do in this situation?
No. But unfortunately, the reality is we are going through every logical step we possibly can.
Before then.
Until that point. We're doing the best that we can, but we have not been successful. So unfortunately, we may be ultimately wind up in a situation, that may ultimately wind up necessitating the use of deadly force. We're trying to do everything we can to avoid that. And that's what I believe the majority of folks want from policing today.
And to be clear, we could go down that route, but there's steps that you got to take first.
Mr. Mayor, Chief, is there any room for dialogue here? I mean, is there any thought of y'all getting into a room with the council here and just having a discussion about this issue?
Just to be clear, even with the last council member was with my chief of staff and my assistant chief Friday afternoon, and there was no question raised around this issue. And no one has, no one has brought that up to me. I have spoken with council member Jenkins. I believe she has been stuck in the middle of this thing. She's been involved with this for months, trying to get something done. So I understand her frustration. It is coming from absolutely good intentions. And so I think that is different. But I don't know how we do if, I'm learning that people are interested in this through press releases and open letters. And it's just destructive in general when I'm trying to rebuild the police department and encourage people to stay here and come into this department when I have to deal with this narrative that the council doesn't support the police in Minneapolis.
So Koski met
with the chief of staff for police and the assistant chief Friday afternoon. Yes. Separate issue.
Separate issue.
Separate issue.
But you didn't bring anything
Nothing.
up
Nothing.
until today in a newsletter.
In a press release. Yes. Yes. Correct. And again, it's just the we're not serious if this is how we're going to do things. That's not a serious way of trying to figure out what happened here. Is this, what do we want around policing in this city? And what do we have to improve upon in the future? There is no question that there was a failure here because this person did not deserve it to come to this point. Again, but it takes time to go through months and months and months of activity. And we will do that after the fact with a thorough review and bring in experts. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.